Hey folks, welcome back to the Gersh's Gaming Channel. Today I have a new Gersh's Guide. This, as you no doubt have inferred from the title of the video, is a guide to the job system in Octopath Traveler. Now, a quick note before we dive in. I think this game's great. It's a classic-style JRPG with everything you expect from a classic-style JRPG. It's got a neat story, it's got somewhat cheesy dialogue, it's got a really strong overall art style conveyed in some charming as hell pixel art, it's got a heck of a good soundtrack. I mean, give this a listen. Isn't that awesome? Alright, so the gimmick of Octopath Traveler is right there in the title. There's 8 characters in your party, and the story is really 8 mini-stories. I've heard that all of the stories tie together in the end, but I'm only about a third of the way through the game, so I don't know that for certain. Speaking of which, I'm going to try to avoid any spoilers in this guide. I'm mainly going to be focusing on the mechanics of the job system, specifically the secondary job system that's in the game, and then have a few thoughts on the basic strategy for party composition and party building. But yeah, this game is pretty great. It came out in 2018. It's available on Switch and on Steam. I got it in a Steam sale for $30. The base price is $60. That $30 price felt right to me. Though having said that, I'm like 25 hours deep into this game, and I'm only about a third of the way through the content. Maybe less if you count the side quests in the game. So you be the judge of the value. I definitely think you get your money's worth with this game. Anyway, without further ado, here we go.
Okay, so this is how the job system works. So we're gonna, for this example, we're gonna use Ophelia the Cleric. So Ophelia's base job is Cleric. She will always have access to all of the Cleric abilities, which you can see here. Alright? Now, when you get to a certain point in the game, you can unlock secondary jobs. Only one secondary job can be equipped at a time per character. And furthermore, you can't have the same secondary job equipped to more than one character at a time. So, for example, right now, I have the warrior secondary job equipped on somebody else, which means I can't equip it on Ophelia. Now, if Ophelia just sticks with Cleric, that's all. You just have the Cleric abilities plus Ophelia's special ability, and that's all you get. But if you go to a secondary job, a couple of things happen. First off, let's just use Scholar as an example. You'll see at the bottom of the screen there, max SP, elemental attack, elemental defense. You get certain statistical bonuses for each secondary class you equip, right? So, in the case of being a Scholar, those are the bonuses you get. If she is a Merchant, she gets, you'll note, smaller bonuses to SP, attack, and defense, but she also gets physical attack, physical defense, and max HP. Now, you'll also notice that next to Merchant, it has 2 weapon symbols, in this case, polearm and bow. So these are additional weapons that Ophelia could use if she has that secondary job equipped. And those are sort of the base weapons for whatever class it happens to be. So, as an example here, let's make Ophelia, let's go ahead and make her a Merchant. Okay, so, if Ophelia is a Merchant, now, if I go over to Equipment, you can see that I can equip a polearm, I can equip a bow, and I couldn't do that before. Ophelia's basic attack action will now include spears and bows as possible attack actions in combat. Additionally, if I go down to her skills, you can see that I can learn skills either in the Cleric tree over here, or in the Merchant tree over here. Now, the cost for each skill is independent for the tree, so it's the 30, 100, 500, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 progression, but because I've no fewer skills under Merchant, it costs fewer job points for me to learn the next Merchant skill than it does to learn the next Cleric skill. Now, one other thing is you note down at the bottom where it says support skills. These are the support skills that I've unlocked on Ophelia specifically for Cleric and Merchant. So right now, if I took Ophelia into combat like this, she'd have all of these Cleric abilities that I've learned, and she'd have all of these Merchant abilities that I've learned. She wouldn't have Tressa's specific special ability, which for Tressa I think is that she just finds money in general. But she has all of these abilities. Now, she also has those support skills at the bottom. As you learn these, so for example, if I was going to learn Sidestep, I'm just going to do this as an example, I now have learned the Grows on Trees skill as a merchant passive skill. So if you go to equip support skills, you can have up to 4 support skills equipped at a time, but these persist even if you aren't currently equipped with that secondary job anymore. So for example, you see that I have Second Wind and The Show Goes On, which are both dancer support skills, even though Ophelia is currently equipped with the merchant class. So let me say that one more time just to be clear. The support skills that you learn always are unlocked for that character after you learn them. The primary skills of the class, for example, in this case, Rest, Trade Tempest, Sidestep, those do not persist if you switch from Merchant to Dancer to Scholar or whatever. Ophelia, because her base class is Cleric, will always have her Cleric skills, and will always have her Cleric special ability, which is to summon. That never goes away. And there's also no requirement that you have Cleric secondary skills equipped. So for example, I could go over here and put on Grows on Trees, and that's it. Ophelia, the Cleric, is now using Merchant and Dancer support skills. Now, if I go back to jobs, and I change Ophelia into a Scholar, you'll note on her equipment, she no longer has bows and bows and polearms. And if I go to her skills, you see Scholar on the right-hand side instead of Merchant. But, again, she still has those secondary skills, those support skills from before. So that's how the job system works in general. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to walk you through my thought process when it comes to picking party, secondary jobs, and sort of loadout for any particular adventure in Octopath Traveler. So, right now I've just finished a tough mission here in Stoneguard, and I'm probably going to go up to Goldshore and do Alvin's quest. So the first thing I do is I go to the jobs menu and I take everybody's secondary job and turn it off. Nobody gets a secondary job to start with, because this will give me the maximum flexibility later when I'm picking my party and the secondary jobs to make sure that everybody has all of the options available. So now, in order to switch party members, you need to go to a tavern, which in this town is located back here. Talk to the bartender, and you say, change party. So the first thing I think about is, okay, what characters do I want to have on this adventure? Well, I'm going to be doing Alfin's quest, so he's got to be in there. And then Ophelia also has her Chapter 3 quest in that same town, so maybe I'll keep her around. Cyrus was the first character that I chose in Octopath Traveler, and as of this point of where I am in the game, which is about a third of the way through, whoever your first character is always with you. So Cyrus is always with me, he stays there. So I will keep Ophelia, I'll keep Cyrus, we'll have Alfin, and then we need one more person. Let's swap out Therian for Tressa. Alright, so this is going to be my party moving forward. Now, things to think about in party composition. You want to be able to cover all of your bases in terms of weaknesses that enemies can exploit. So what does that mean? That means that you'd really like, ideally, you'd like to have the ability to do damage with swords, polearms, daggers, axes, bows, and staves, all of the different types of weapons, and you would also like to be able to do fire, ice, lightning, wind, shadow, and light damage. So in total, that's 12 different sort of sets of skills that you'd like to have, ideally. That will allow you to deal with anybody's weak point gauge. Okay, so, with that having been said, let's now go to the job screen. Okay? So the other piece that you want to think about besides weak point gauges is just kind of how you want to build the characters. So for example, Alfin, because he's the Apothecary, he's got kind of a good chunk of HP, so I'm wondering, maybe I should build him into a little more of a tank. Well, if he's going to be tanky, might be a good idea for him to have warrior skills, because that gives him things like cover, and it gives him additional physical defense and things like that. You look at the stat bonuses, he gets HP, physical attack, and physical defense boosts. Okay, cool. That also gives me swords and polearms, which right now there's nobody in my party from their base classes, their base jobs, who are able to use polearms. Okay, so that seems good. So that gives me weapons. As an apothecary, he has, I think, one ice ability, but we'll come back to the magic stuff in a moment. So this gives me another weapon in the toolbox. So right now I have staves, I have swords, daggers, axes, and polearms. Now I just need bows. Well, again, maybe it would be a good idea to have Therian take the hunter, because that gives him bows. It also gives him axes. Now he's got a lot of weapons that are available to him. Increases his physical attack. I'd like him to be kind of a, serious stabby kind of guy for this set of missions. So, okay, let's make him a hunter. Awesome. Alright, so now I've got Cyrus. And Cyrus is great because he's got, just in his base scholar kit, fire, lightning, and ice damage. So that's cool. What other types of damage is there that I don't have covered? Well, there's light damage, shadow damage, and wind damage. So light damage comes from the Cleric class, but guess what? I have a Cleric in the party already. Shadow comes from Dancer, wind comes from Merchant. Now, I think I mentioned this, one of the things that you want to consider when assigning secondary jobs is how you want to build the character overall. And I know that the Dancer has a secondary skill that allows you to regenerate SP, basically mana, in combat. And that seems like a really good idea for Cyrus, because I'm always running out of mana with him. So, because it gives me both the shadow damage and is in the direction that I'd like to build, let's go ahead and give Cyrus Dancer as a secondary job. The weapons kind of don't matter anymore, because I've got all 6 weapons covered, but this does give me shadow damage for everyone, so I think that's good. And now for Ophelia, ideally we would give her Merchant class, and that's probably not a bad idea. It kind of increases all of her abilities a little bit, gives her a little more HP, and if we gave her Merchant, she would have access to wind magic along with her light magic, and that would have all bases covered. However, I actually want to bump up Ophelia's scholarly traits a little bit. I want to unlock a few more skills over there so that she can have the spell power boost passive skill that Cyrus enjoys. So I'm going to put her on Scholar for now, but then part of this is, as I go and take this party and start adventuring with them on whatever the next quest is, this needs to be able to be flexible. If I find myself running into a bunch of enemies that are vulnerable to wind, I can just switch Ophelia over to Merchant, and it's no big deal. If I find myself in a situation where there's a lot of enemies who are vulnerable to certain physical attacks, maybe Cyrus changes from, like, Dancer to Apothecary, just in order to have, the extra axe power, or maybe Thief in order to get swords and daggers on him. There's a balance here between being flexible enough to handle what kinds of enemy types you're seeing, and also building your character properly. So, now that I have my characters picked, and I have my secondary jobs picked, we need to go check equipment real fast. So I'm going to go over to equipment here, and make sure that, we have decent weapons for everybody. So this makeshift axe needs to go, the makeshift bow needs to go, and I'm just doing this fast. Obviously, you can be a little more specific, and making sure that, you pick the right things for your characters, but as I said, this is just an example. Okay, so then we've got equipment figured out, we've got party figured out, we've got secondary jobs figured out. That's about it. That's my approach in creating a party for this phase of the game. I will say the one last thing is then if there's any job points that you want to spend on skills before you set out, it's probably about the time to do that. So, for example, I could learn a few more skills with Ophelia as Scholar right now, but I want to see what kind of enemy types we're fighting. If I start running into, like, a bunch of fire enemies, I'd like to have the flexibility to learn Firestorm with the available job points I have. But if we're actually going to be facing a lot of lightning enemies, then I want to make it lightning blast, right? So I'm holding my job points for some flexibility right now. And again, it's a balance between flexibility, versatility in terms of being able to attack all weak points, and overall character build in order to get the right combination of support skills on your characters. So that's how I build a party in Octopath Traveler.
Alright, that'll about do it for this guide. If this video was helpful to you, or heck, even if you just enjoyed it, give it a like for me. Also, if there's other games you think need a Gersh's guide, or even another aspect of Octopath Traveler you think could use some more explaining, leave me a comment below. Be sure to check out my StarCraft Mission Brief series as well. I'm still working on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, GG.